Hey there, warriors of wisdom. Picture this. You're playing chess, but your opponent keeps changing the rules. That's what dealing with a narcissist feels like. But today we're flipping the board. I'm breaking down 9 psychological warfare tactics narcissists use and giving you the Stoic shield to deflect every single one. By the end of this video, you'll spot their moves before they make them. Let's go. The guilt trip tornado. Picture a master puppeteer pulling strings of shame and obligation. That's exactly what narcissists do with guilt tripping. They'll bring up past favors, amplify minor mistakes, and make you feel responsible for their happiness. After everything I've done for you? Sound familiar? But here's what's really happening. They're creating an emotional debt that can never be repaid. Every favor comes with invisible strings. Every gift becomes a weapon. They'll remind you of that time they helped you move, conveniently forgetting the countless times you've been there for them. The narcissist's goal? To keep you in a constant state of emotional debt. They're banking on your conscience, knowing that good people hate feeling like they've let others down. It's a calculated move to maintain control through perpetual obligation. They'll often combine guilt with comparison tactics. Your sister would never treat me this way, or my ex always appreciated my efforts. These statements are designed to create a competitive dynamic where you're constantly trying to prove your worth. What makes this manipulation so effective is its subtle nature. It's not outright abuse, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. Each guilt trip seems small enough to dismiss, but together they form a crushing weight of perpetual inadequacy. The narcissist will strategically time their guilt trips for maximum impact. They'll wait until you're celebrating a success or feeling happy, then drop their emotional bomb to bring you back under their control. It's like they have a radar for your moments of joy. They're masters at rewriting history to support their guilt narratives. That time they promised to help with your project but didn't show up? Somehow, they'll twist it into a story about how you didn't appreciate their intention to help. The really insidious part? They'll make their guilt trips seem like they're coming from a place of love and concern. I'm only saying this because I care about you, becomes their shield against any accusation of manipulation. Physical symptoms often accompany their guilt campaigns. They'll appear exhausted, sick, or overwhelmed, implying that your actions are directly responsible for their suffering. It's emotional blackmail dressed up as vulnerability. But here's what they don't want you to know. Their guilt trips are actually confessions of their own insecurities. Every time they try to make you feel guilty, they're revealing their own fears of inadequacy and abandonment. The gaslighting labyrinth. Imagine someone slowly dimming the lights while insisting the room is as bright as ever. That's gaslighting, the narcissist's favorite way to make you question your own reality. They'll deny conversations that definitely happened, twist your memories, and make you feel crazy for trusting your own perception. The real danger lies in its cumulative effect. One small lie might seem harmless, but when they consistently deny your experiences, rewrite history, and challenge your memories, they're actually rewiring your brain to doubt itself. It's psychological warfare at its finest. They'll often start with subtle contradictions. That dinner plan you clearly remember making? No, we never discussed that. That promise they made last week? You must have dreamed it. Each denial chips away at your confidence in your own memory. Watch for their tactical use of confusion. They'll deliberately give you mixed signals. Say one thing, but do another. Then act like you're the one who's confused. When you try to clarify, they'll respond with, "You're too sensitive," or "You're imagining things." The gaslighter's arsenal includes selective memory. They'll conveniently forget their mistakes while having crystal clear recall of yours. Every argument becomes a maze where you're constantly searching for evidence of things you know happened. They're experts at moving the goalposts. Once you provide proof of something they denied, they'll shift to, "That's not what I meant," or "You're taking it out of context." The game is rigged. You can never win because they'll always change the rules. Pay attention to their use of collective gaslighting. They'll recruit others to support their version of reality. "Everyone agrees with me," or "Nobody else sees it that way." It's a coordinated attack on your perception, designed to make you feel isolated in your truth. The most dangerous part? They'll gaslight you about the gaslighting. When you confront them about their manipulation, they'll deny it so vehemently that you'll start questioning whether you understand what gaslighting even is. Look for the warning signs in your own behavior. Are you constantly apologizing? Do you feel like you're walking on eggshells? Are you always questioning your memory? These are red flags that you're caught in the gaslighting labyrinth. Their ultimate goal isn't just to control your present, it's to rewrite your past and dictate your future. By making you doubt your own judgment, they ensure you'll rely on theirs. It's mind control disguised as concern. The Future Faking Festival. Welcome to the grand illusion of future faking, where narcissists paint spectacular tomorrows that never come. They're like master artists, sketching beautiful futures with promises of dream homes, perfect relationships, and amazing adventures, all while having zero intention of making any of it real. These promises aren't random. They're carefully crafted to target your deepest desires. Want career growth? They'll promise to connect you with their high-level contacts. Dreaming of settling down? They'll talk about your future wedding, even though they haven't committed to next week's dinner plans. Notice how their promises always seem to come with perfect timing. Just when you're about to give up on them, they'll dangle a spectacular future in front of you. It's like they have a sixth sense for when you're slipping away, and they'll pull you back in with visions of everything you've ever wanted. The future faker's timeline is always conveniently vague. Soon, when the time is right, or after things settle down, are their favorite phrases. They're selling you tickets to a show that's perpetually coming soon, always just out of reach but supposedly worth waiting for. They use future faking as a control mechanism, keeping you invested in a future that exists only in their words. Like a carrot on a stick, they'll keep you chasing their promises, using your hope as fuel for their manipulation engine. Here's their clever twist. They'll sprinkle in just enough small, fulfilled promises to keep you believing in the big ones. Maybe they'll follow through on a dinner date or a weekend trip, just to maintain the illusion that all their other promises are equally valid. Watch how they use future faking to compete with your other opportunities. Got a job offer in another city? Suddenly they'll talk about starting a business together. Met someone new? Now they're finally ready to discuss marriage. It's all about keeping you locked in their orbit. The really toxic part. When their promises inevitably fall through, they'll blame external circumstances, or worse, make it seem like it was your fault. If you had been more supportive, or if you hadn't pushed so hard, become their go-to excuses. They're essentially creating an alternate reality, one where they're always the hero who wants to give you everything. But the world just keeps getting in the way. This narrative protects them from accountability while keeping you hoping for a future that's always just around the corner. The most painful aspect is how they'll use your disappointment against you. When you express frustration about their broken promises, they'll accuse you of being negative, unreasonable, or ungrateful. They've mastered the art of making you feel guilty for expecting them to follow through. The triangulation trap. Enter the narcissist's favorite game show, triangulation, where they pit people against each other while positioning themselves as the prize. Think of it as emotional chess, where you're not just a player, but a pawn in their elaborate power game. They'll strategically introduce competitive elements into every relationship. Suddenly, you're hearing about how their ex still wants them back, or how their coworker finds them irresistible. Each story is carefully crafted to trigger your insecurities and keep you fighting for position. The narcissist creates an invisible audience for your relationship. They'll casually mention how everyone is interested in them, or how they're constantly being pursued. This phantom competition serves to keep you anxious and working harder to maintain your place in their life. Watch for their subtle comparisons. They'll praise others in ways that highlight what they consider your shortcomings. Sarah from work is so spontaneous. Or, Mike always knows how to dress for success. Each compliment to others is actually a carefully aimed criticism at you. They're masters at creating rivalry between people who should be allies. They'll share confidential information about each party to the other, positioning themselves as the trusted keeper of secrets while ensuring neither side compares notes about their manipulation. One of their favorite tactics is playing the role of the reluctant prize. They'll act overwhelmed by all the attention they receive, making it seem like they're choosing you over countless others. This artificial scarcity makes their attention feel more valuable than it actually is. The triangulation extends to social media, where they'll strategically interact with certain people to trigger your jealousy. Those ambiguous likes, comments, and interactions aren't random. They're calculated moves designed to keep you checking their online activity. They'll create emergencies that put people in competition to help them. Multiple friends or romantic interests will be called upon for support, creating a twisted game show where contestants compete to be the most useful. The prize? A moment of the narcissist's approval. Notice how they maintain multiple backup supplies of attention. They'll keep past relationships on life support through occasional contact, maintain flirtatious friendships, or stay in touch with exes. It's their insurance policy against ever having to face their own emptiness. The most toxic part of triangulation is how it isolates you from potential support systems. By creating competition and distrust between people who might compare notes about their behavior, they ensure their manipulation remains unchallenged by collective awareness. The Projection Puppet Show. Welcome to the Projection Puppet Show, where narcissists take their own flaws and pin them on you like badges of shame. It's their favorite magic trick, making their issues disappear by convincing you they're actually yours. Watch how smoothly they project their infidelity fears. The more they accuse you of cheating, flirting, or being untrustworthy, the more likely it is that they're the ones with wandering eyes. Their accusations are actually confessions wrapped in defensive armor. They're masters at projecting their emotional instability. "You're so sensitive" becomes their battle cry, even as they explode over minor inconveniences. Every time they call you unstable or over-emotional, they're actually describing their own internal chaos. The projection gets more intense when it comes to their insecurities. If they're secretly feeling incompetent at work, suddenly they're hyper-focused on your career choices. Their harsh criticism of your abilities is really just their own fear of inadequacy wearing a mask. Pay attention to their accusations of manipulation. The more they claim you're trying to control them, the more likely they're the ones pulling the strings. It's like they're describing their own tactical manual while pretending to read yours. They'll project their guilt onto you. If they're hiding something, they'll become increasingly suspicious of your behavior. Their constant demands to check your phone or know your whereabouts are actually windows into their own secretive world. The really toxic part? They'll project their self-hatred. All those harsh criticisms about your appearance, intelligence, or capabilities are actually their own self-doubts being voiced through you. You become the screen they project their self-loathing onto. Notice how they project their relationship with power. They'll accuse you of being domineering or controlling, while they're actually the ones maintaining an iron grip on every aspect of the relationship. It's their way of maintaining control while appearing to be the victim. Their projections often come with a side of gaslighting. When you try to point out that they're the ones exhibiting the behavior they're accusing you of, they'll deny it so vehemently that you'll start questioning your own perception. Here's the ultimate projection. They'll accuse you of being a narcissist. When you finally start recognizing their patterns and calling them out, they'll flip the script and claim you're the one with narcissistic traits. It's their last-ditch effort to maintain their false self-image. The love-bombing landmine. Love bombing is the narcissist's shock and awe campaign of affection. They'll overwhelm you with attention, compliments, and declarations of undying love, all before they've even learned your middle name. It's emotional flooding designed to sweep you off your feet and into their control. The intensity is strategic. They'll learn your deepest desires and mirror them perfectly. Want someone who understands your passion for art? Suddenly they're expert critics. Love traveling? They've got adventures planned for the next 5 years. Each reflection is calculated to make them seem like your perfect match. They accelerate intimacy at warp speed. Within days, they're talking about moving in together, marriage, or having children. They'll share deeply personal stories to create false intimacy, making you feel special for being trusted with their vulnerability. Notice the grand gestures that come too soon. Expensive gifts, surprise vacations, or elaborate declarations of love, all designed to make you feel indebted. Each gift is a future weapon in their manipulation arsenal. Their compliments are excessive and oddly specific. They don't just say you're smart, they claim you're the most intelligent person they've ever met. Every trait becomes superlative, making their praise as unsustainable as it is intoxicating. Watch for the way they isolate you through idealization. "No one understands you like I do" becomes their mantra. They'll position themselves as your sole source of understanding and validation, slowly cutting you off from other support systems. The love bombing creates an emotional high that becomes addictive. Like any drug, the initial rush is impossible to maintain, but they'll keep you hooked with intermittent doses, making you chase that early feeling of perfect love. They're experts at timing their affection for maximum impact. Just when you start to pull away, they'll unleash another wave of intense adoration. It's like a slot machine of love. You never know when you'll hit the jackpot again. The real danger lies in how they use this early period against you later. When the mask slips and they begin their devaluation, they'll remind you of how perfect things were at first, implying that any problems must be your fault, since they proved their capacity for true love. Their love bombing leaves psychological landmines that can take years to diffuse. Even after the relationship ends, you might find yourself longing for that initial intensity, not realizing it was as artificial as a movie set, all facade and no foundation. The silent treatment siege. The silent treatment is psychological warfare in its purest form. It's the narcissist's go-to nuclear option when they want to punish you, and they'll deploy it with surgical precision. This isn't just someone needing space, it's calculated emotional torture. They use silence as a weapon, knowing that humans are wired for connection. When they suddenly go dark, they're counting on your imagination to run wild, filling the void with worst-case scenarios and self-doubt. It's psychological waterboarding through absence. Watch how they time their silence for maximum impact. They'll often disappear right before important events, during celebrations, or when you need them most. It's a power play designed to remind you that they control the emotional thermostat of your relationship. The silent treatment comes with plausible deniability. "I was just busy," or "my phone died," become their shields against accountability. They'll gaslight you into thinking you're overreacting to their emotional vanishing act, even as they deliberately ignore your calls and messages. They're masters at partial silence, responding to some messages while ignoring others, maintaining just enough contact to keep you anxious and uncertain. This intermittent reinforcement creates an addiction-like response, making you pathetically grateful for any crumb of attention. Notice how they use silence to train your behavior. Every time you misbehave by setting boundaries or questioning them, they'll deploy their silent treatment. It's classical conditioning at its most toxic. They're training you to associate independence with punishment. The silence often comes with an audience. They'll actively post on social media or engage with others while ignoring you completely. This public display of selective silence is designed to humiliate you and demonstrate their power over your emotional state. They'll break their silence strategically, often when they sense you're about to give up and move on. Their return comes with no explanation or apology, just an expectation that you'll be so relieved by their presence that you'll accept whatever crumbs they offer. The really insidious part? They'll make their silence your fault. "You made me shut down" becomes their justification, shifting responsibility for their emotional abuse onto your shoulders. They're the ones throwing the punch, but they'll convince you that you ran into their fist. Each round of silent treatment leaves emotional scar tissue. You become hypervigilant, constantly monitoring their mood for signs of impending silence. This fear of abandonment becomes a collar they can yank whenever they want to bring you to heel. The victim, violin virtuoso. Meet the narcissist in their favorite role, the eternal victim. They're the star of their own tragedy, where everyone else is the villain, and they're the misunderstood hero. It's a Broadway-worthy performance designed to manipulate your empathy. They collect grievances like precious gems, each perceived slight, carefully preserved and displayed when needed. Every past relationship, job, or friendship comes with a story where they were wronged, betrayed, or unfairly treated. Yet somehow, they never played any part in these dramas. Watch how they weaponize their victimhood. Any criticism becomes an attack. Any boundary becomes persecution. They'll respond to reasonable requests with tales of their suffering, making you feel guilty for causing them more pain. The victim role comes with a carefully curated backstory. Childhood trauma, past betrayals, and personal hardships become their shield against accountability. "You don't understand what I've been through" becomes their get-out-of-jail-free card for any bad behavior. They're experts at competitive suffering. No matter what hardship you're facing, they've faced worse. Your bad day at work becomes an opportunity for them to recount their epic tales of workplace persecution. Your pain is always overshadowed by their suffering. Notice how they use their victim status to control others. They'll guilt friends and family into taking sides, creating a protective circle of enablers who buy into their narrative of constant victimization. Each supporter becomes another character in their tragic play. They'll even play the victim about being called a victim. When confronted about their manipulation, they'll claim you're attacking them for sharing their feelings. It's a masterful double bind where any attempt to address their behavior becomes proof of their victimhood. The victim role serves as their moral camouflage. How can someone who's suffered so much be the bad guy? They use their perceived victimhood to justify their worst actions, making others feel guilty for holding them accountable. Pay attention to their selective victimhood. They're perfectly capable of being assertive or even aggressive when it serves them, but the moment they face consequences, they revert to helpless victim mode. It's like watching a predator suddenly play dead. The ultimate irony? While playing the victim, they're actually victimizing others. Their supposed helplessness is a smokescreen for their manipulation, letting them harm others while maintaining their self-image as the wounded party. The boundary bulldozer. The boundary bulldozer sees your personal limits as mere suggestions, treating them like yellow caution tape at a construction site, something to be ignored or torn through. They're on a mission to prove that your boundaries don't apply to them. They start with small violations, testing your defenses. A slightly inappropriate comment here, a minor invasion of privacy there. Each transgression is designed to gauge your reaction and set precedents for bigger violations to come. Watch their tactical ignorance in action. When you explicitly state a boundary, they'll act confused or hurt. "I didn't know that would bother you" becomes their mantra, even when you've explained your limits multiple times. It's selective amnesia serving their agenda. They're masters of the boundary fake-out. They'll temporarily respect a limit to gain your trust, only to violate it more severely later. This creates a false sense of security, making you question whether you're being too strict when they eventually cross the line. Notice how they use emotional manipulation to weaken your resolve. They'll make you feel guilty for having boundaries, suggesting that real love shouldn't have limits. Your reasonable boundaries become evidence of your lack of trust or commitment. They employ the water drop technique, constantly pushing against your boundaries in small ways until they wear you down. Each small concession you make becomes evidence that your boundaries are negotiable, leading to increasingly bold violations. The boundary bulldozer has an arsenal of minimizing tactics. "You're too sensitive," or "it's not a big deal," become their go-to responses when you protest their violations. They'll gaslight you into thinking your normal boundaries are actually unreasonable restrictions. They're experts at using reciprocity against you. They'll violate your boundaries while demanding strict respect for their own. Any attempt to point out this double standard is met with accusations of your unfairness or double standards. Watch for their strategic timing. They'll often test boundaries when you're vulnerable, tired, stressed, or in need of support. They know that's when your defenses are weakest, and you're most likely to let violations slide for the sake of peace. The most dangerous part? They train you to doubt your right to have boundaries at all. Over time, you start questioning whether your limits are reasonable, whether you're being too rigid, whether their violations are actually your fault. It's the slow erosion of your self-protective instincts. Now that we've exposed their playbook, let's forge your stoic armor. Remember what Marcus Aurelius taught us. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. We're not here to play their game. We're here to transcend it. These stoic principles aren't just ancient wisdom. They're your psychological Kevlar. When they try to guilt trip you, remember Epictetus. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Their manipulation only works if you buy into their reality. You're not just learning to defend yourself. You're becoming someone who can't be manipulated. The narcissist's weapons become powerless against your stoic mindset. Their tricks become transparent, their manipulation obvious. Remember this. Every time you maintain your boundaries, every time you stay true to your values, despite their attempts to shake you, you're not just winning a battle, you're transforming into someone they can't touch. Warriors, this isn't just about survival, it's about thriving. Take these tools, sharpen them with practice, and watch as the narcissist's power over you dissolves like morning mist under the sun of your newfound strength. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our community of modern Stoics. Share this video with someone who needs this knowledge. Together, we're building an army of unshakable minds. Remember, you're not just learning about manipulation, you're mastering the art of mental freedom. See you in the next video, Warriors of Wisdom.